Before we dive into this shocking story of desperation, deception, and dangerous consequences, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because this tale will leave you absolutely speechless. Drop a comment right now and tell me, would you ever interfere in your child's love life? Let's get into this incredible story. In the bustling city of Lagos, where skyscrapers touched the clouds and Mercedes-Benzes filled the streets, there lived a woman named Diana Mitchell. Diana was everything society defined as successful. At 55 years old, she owned a chain of luxury boutiques across West Africa, lived in a mansion in the exclusive Ikoyi neighborhood, and her name appeared regularly in business magazines as one of the most influential women entrepreneurs in the region. She had built her empire from absolutely nothing, starting as a small market trader and working her way up through sheer determination and business savvy. Diana had everything money could buy: designer clothes, expensive jewelry, luxury cars, international vacations. She was respected, admired, and envied by many. But there was one thing that kept her awake at night, one thing that made her feel like a failure despite all her success. Her daughter Rachel was 30 years old and still unmarried. In their upper-class social circle, this was seen as a catastrophic failure. Diana's friends, all successful women like herself, had married off their daughters years ago. Some of their daughters were already on their second child, posting perfect family photos on social media that made Diana's heart ache with envy and shame. Every social gathering became a nightmare for Diana. "Diana, when will we be wearing aso-ebi for Rachel's wedding?" The women would ask with fake concern masking their judgment. "That beautiful girl is not getting any younger. Oh, better hurry before all the good men are taken." At church, the pastor's wife would pull Diana aside with pitying looks. "We are praying for Rachel. God's time is the best, but sometimes we must also help ourselves, you understand." Even Diana's own sisters constantly reminded her that she was failing as a mother by not securing a husband for Rachel. The pressure was suffocating. Diana felt it crushing her chest every single day. She had given Rachel everything: the best schools, university education abroad, a management position in one of her boutiques, a beautiful apartment, a car. But none of that mattered in a society that measured a woman's worth by her marital status. Diana's business success meant nothing if she couldn't get her daughter married. The whispers followed her everywhere. Some people suggested that Rachel must be cursed. Others claimed Diana must have offended her ancestors. The cruelest rumors suggested that Rachel was promiscuous and that's why no decent man wanted her. But the truth was far simpler and more painful. Rachel was an independent, educated, successful woman who refused to settle. She had dated several men over the years, but none of them met her standards. Some wanted to control her. Others were intimidated by her success and education. Some were only interested in accessing her mother's wealth. Rachel had broken off 3 engagements in the past because she discovered the men were not who they claimed to be. She would rather be single than trapped in a miserable marriage. Diana understood this intellectually. She respected her daughter's strength. But emotionally, the social pressure was destroying her. One night, after a particularly humiliating charity gala where every conversation somehow turned to Rachel's unmarried status, Diana made a desperate decision. If Rachel wouldn't find a husband, Diana would find one for her. Not through traditional matchmaking. That had failed. No, Diana had a different plan. A secret plan. A plan that would solve everything. She would pay a man to marry Rachel. Not just any man, but the perfect man. Handsome, educated, well-spoken, someone who could play the role convincingly. Someone Rachel could actually fall in love with. Once they were married and Rachel was happy, the truth wouldn't matter. The end would justify the means. Diana began her search discreetly. She couldn't use a traditional matchmaker because they talked too much. She needed someone who understood the business nature of this arrangement. Through a trusted friend who asked no questions, Diana was connected to an exclusive, underground service that specialized in arrangement marriages for wealthy families. It was more common than people knew: desperate parents paying actors to court and marry their difficult children. The service guaranteed discretion and had a roster of educated, attractive men trained in the art of courtship and romance. After reviewing several profiles, Diana found him. Brandon Cole, 35 years old, MBA from a prestigious university, charming smile, impeccable manners, and a resume that showed he'd worked for several international companies. His profile stated he was recently relocated to Lagos for business opportunities. He was perfect. Too perfect, perhaps, but Diana's desperation clouded her judgment. She arranged a private meeting at a 5-star hotel. Brandon arrived dressed in an expensive suit, his cologne subtle and sophisticated. His handshake was firm, his eye contact confident. He spoke with an American accent mixed with British undertones that suggested international education. Mrs. Mitchell, I understand you have a proposition for me, Brandon said smoothly, his smile revealing perfect white teeth. Diana explained the situation carefully, watching his reaction. She expected shock or judgment, but Brandon remained calm and professional, as if this was a normal business transaction. Your daughter doesn't know about this arrangement, I presume? He asked. Diana shook her head. She can never know. You will court her naturally. Make her fall in love with you. Marry her. After 1 year of marriage, I will pay you $200,000. If you stay married for 5 years, I will give you an additional $300,000 and set you up with your own business. But if Rachel ever discovers this arrangement, you get nothing. Brandon leaned back in his chair, considering. Diana held her breath. Finally, he smiled. Mrs. Mitchell, I understand a mother's love for her daughter. I respect that you want her happiness. I accept your offer, but with one condition. I will not just pretend to love Rachel. I will genuinely try to make her happy. I will be a good husband. This may have started as a business arrangement, but I believe in doing things with integrity. If I'm going to marry your daughter, I will honor that commitment. Diana felt tears of relief and gratitude filling her eyes. This man was not just handsome and charming. He had principles. He had integrity. She had found the perfect husband for Rachel. Over the next few weeks, Diana orchestrated their meeting carefully. She accidentally arranged for Brandon to be at the same art gallery opening Rachel was attending. She made sure they were introduced through a mutual friend, making it seem completely natural and coincidental. Rachel, who had been burned by men before, was initially cautious. But Brandon was patient, respectful, and genuinely interested in her thoughts and opinions. He asked about her work, her dreams, her favorite books and movies. He listened when she talked, really listened, not just waiting for his turn to speak. Their first official date was at an upscale restaurant. Brandon arrived early, brought flowers, not roses, which were too cliché, but Rachel's favorite orchids, which he had somehow discovered she loved. He pulled out her chair, asked thoughtful questions, and made her laugh with witty observations about life in Lagos. He didn't try to impress her with money or status. Instead, he impressed her with intelligence, humor, and genuine interest. When he dropped her home, he didn't try to kiss her or push for anything physical. He simply said, I had a wonderful evening. I'd love to see you again if you're interested. Rachel found herself thinking about Brandon constantly. He was different from other men she'd dated. He wasn't intimidated by her success. He celebrated it. When she talked about her business ideas, he offered genuine insights from his supposed MBA experience. He introduced her to art exhibits, jazz concerts, intellectual discussions. He respected her boundaries. He didn't rush physical intimacy. He seemed to genuinely care about her mind and her heart, not just her body or her mother's money. For the first time in years, Rachel felt herself falling in love. Real, genuine love that made her heart race and her face flush when he called. Diana watched the courtship unfold with satisfaction and relief. Her plan was working perfectly. Brandon was playing his role flawlessly, but it didn't seem like acting. He genuinely seemed to care for Rachel. They spent hours talking on the phone. He surprised her with thoughtful gifts that showed he paid attention to what she loved. He met her friends and charmed them all. He was patient, kind, and attentive. After 6 months of dating, Brandon proposed. It was perfect, a private beach at sunset, a beautiful ring, and words that made Rachel cry with joy. She said yes without hesitation. The wedding was everything Diana had dreamed of. It was held at one of Lagos's most exclusive venues, attended by over 500 guests from the highest levels of society. Rachel looked stunning in her custom-designed wedding gown. Brandon looked handsome and confident in his tailored tuxedo. As they exchanged vows, Rachel's eyes shone with genuine love and happiness. Diana watched from the front row, tears streaming down her face, tears of relief, joy, and a tiny bit of guilt that she quickly pushed away. Rachel was finally married. The social pressure was over. Her daughter was happy. The ends justified the means. The first few months of marriage seemed blissful. Rachel glowed with happiness. She and Brandon moved into a beautiful apartment that Diana had gifted them as a wedding present. Brandon had supposedly started a consulting business, and Rachel continued managing her mother's boutique. They seemed like the perfect couple, posting happy photos on social media, hosting dinner parties, attending social events together. Diana finally felt at peace. Her plan had worked. Rachel was happy. Brandon was a good husband. Everything was perfect. But perfection, as Diana would soon discover, is always an illusion. About 4 months into the marriage, small things began to happen that Rachel initially dismissed. Brandon started taking phone calls in private, stepping out of the room or going to the balcony when his phone rang. When Rachel asked who called, he would give vague answers like, just business, or a client. His consulting business required him to travel frequently, sometimes for several days at a time. He was always vague about where he was going and what projects he was working on. When Rachel asked for details, he would kiss her forehead and say, "Don't worry your pretty head about boring business stuff." Rachel's best friend Maya was the first to voice concern. They were having lunch when Maya leaned in and said carefully, "Rachel, I don't want to overstep, but has Brandon seemed a bit secretive lately? My cousin saw him at a restaurant with some questionable-looking men last week. Like, really rough types. Not the kind of people a consultant would meet with." Rachel laughed it off. "Maya, you're being paranoid. Brandon meets with all kinds of people for his business. You know how consulting works." But the seed of doubt had been planted. Then Rachel started noticing financial irregularities. Small amounts of money missing from their joint account. Withdrawals she didn't make and Brandon couldn't quite explain. "Must be bank errors," he would say casually. "I'll look into it." But he never did. Then larger amounts started disappearing. $5,000 here, $10,000 there. When Rachel checked their statements, she found transfers to accounts she didn't recognize. When she confronted Brandon, he became defensive for the first time since she'd known him. "Are you accusing me of stealing? After everything we have together?" "I'm hurt, Rachel. Those are business investments I told you about." But Rachel's instincts, honed from years of running her mother's business, told her something was wrong. She started paying closer attention. She noticed that Brandon's business meetings never resulted in any actual business. No contracts signed, no clients gained, no income generated. His consulting business existed only in name. She found a second phone hidden in his car, locked with a password she didn't know. When she asked about it, he claimed it was for business to separate personal and professional calls. But why hide it? One night, while Brandon was supposedly traveling for business, Rachel's world began to crumble. She received a call from her bank's fraud department. There had been attempted wire transfers from her personal account, transfers of $50,000 to an offshore account. The bank had flagged them as suspicious and blocked them, but they needed her to confirm whether she had authorized these transfers. Rachel's blood ran cold. She had not authorized anything. The account trying to receive the money was in the Cayman Islands, a known tax haven and money laundering destination. Rachel immediately called her mother. Diana arrived within an hour, finding Rachel in tears, surrounded by bank statements and financial documents. "Mom, something is very wrong with Brandon. Money is disappearing. He's lying to me. There are attempted wire transfers I didn't authorize. I think he married me for money." Diana's face went pale. The guilt she had suppressed for months came flooding back. Rachel continued through tears, "And Mom, I need to ask you something. Maya's sister works at that art gallery where I first met Brandon. She said you had called them specifically to make sure both Brandon and I would be there that night. You arranged our meeting, didn't you? This is getting absolutely crazy. If you're as shocked as I am, hit that like button right now and share this with someone who needs to hear this story. Drop a comment. What do you think Brandon's real plan is? Let's find out what happens next." Diana's hands trembled. The moment she had dreaded had arrived. She couldn't lie anymore. With tears streaming down her face, Diana confessed everything. The social pressure, the desperate plan, the underground service, the payment arrangement, all of it. Rachel's face went from shock to horror to absolute betrayal. "You paid someone to marry me?" Rachel's voice was barely a whisper, thick with pain. "You commodified me? Sold me like I was some damaged goods that couldn't find a buyer? Do you know how humiliating this is? How soul-crushing? Rachel, please understand. I did it because I love you. The pressure from society was destroying me. I just wanted you to be happy, to be married, to—" Diana reached for her daughter, but Rachel jerked away violently. "You wanted me to be happy? Or you wanted to stop being embarrassed at your fancy parties? This wasn't about me at all. This was about your reputation. You were willing to sacrifice my dignity, my trust, my entire future, just so your friends would stop asking questions. That's not fair, Rachel. I genuinely believe Brandon was a good man. I thought you two would fall in love naturally, and you did. I saw how happy you were. I thought," Diana's voice cracked. "You thought what? That the ends justify the means? That lying and manipulation are okay if they produce a wedding? Mom, you didn't just betray me. You taught me that I'm not valuable enough to be loved for who I am. That my worth is so low, you had to literally purchase a husband for me." The pain in Rachel's eyes broke Diana's heart. But before they could continue, Rachel's phone rang. It was the bank again. While they had been talking, there had been 5 more attempted transfers, totaling over $200,000. All blocked, but the attempts were escalating. Someone with access to Rachel's account information was desperately trying to drain her funds. And that someone could only be Brandon. Rachel and Diana looked at each other, their personal conflict temporarily set aside as a more immediate danger became clear. Rachel pulled out her laptop and began a deep dive into Brandon's background, something she realized with horror she had never done thoroughly because she had been so blinded by love and her mother's endorsement. What she found in the next hour made her blood run cold. Brandon Cole was not who he claimed to be. His real name was Brandon Williams, and he had a criminal record spanning 3 countries. He was part of an organized crime syndicate that specialized in romance fraud and identity theft on a massive scale. The operation was sophisticated and terrifying. Brandon and his associates would target wealthy, unmarried women, particularly those whose families were desperate to see them married. They had connections with underground arrangement marriage services. In fact, they ran some of these services themselves. When desperate parents like Diana came looking to pay someone to marry their children, these criminals saw gold mines. They would accept the arrangement, play the role of perfect husband convincingly enough to access the family's financial information, legal documents, and trust. Then, once they had everything they needed, they would systematically drain bank accounts, take out loans in the victim's name, steal identities, and disappear. Rachel found news articles about at least 7 other women across West Africa who had fallen victim to the same scheme. One woman in Ghana had lost over $1 million. Another in Kenya had her entire business destroyed when Brandon's associates took out massive loans using her company as collateral. A woman in South Africa had been left with crushing debt and a ruined credit score. In every case, the pattern was the same: a charming man, a whirlwind romance or arranged marriage, access to finances, and then devastation. Some of these women had been introduced to Brandon through their parents who had paid for the arrangement, just like Diana. Others had met him through dating apps or social events. But the result was always the same: financial ruin and emotional destruction. "Oh my God," Rachel whispered, her face pale as she read article after article. "He's a professional con artist. This is what he does for a living. I'm just another mark to him. We're both just marks." Diana felt like she might vomit. Her desperate attempt to help her daughter had instead delivered Rachel directly into the hands of a dangerous criminal. She had literally paid a predator to marry her child. The guilt was suffocating. They discovered that the luxury apartment Diana had gifted them as a wedding present had been secretly refinanced by Brandon using forged documents. He had taken out a substantial loan against the property. Rachel's car had been used as collateral for another loan she knew nothing about. Brandon had systematically been building a house of cards using their assets, planning to trigger everything at once and disappear with the money before anyone realized what happened. The attempted wire transfers earlier that day weren't impulsive. They were the beginning of his exit strategy. Rachel's phone buzzed with a text from Brandon. "Hey beautiful, my meeting is running late. We'll be home tomorrow instead of tonight. Love you." The casualness of his lie, the ease with which he deceived her, made Rachel feel sick. She showed her mother the text. Diana's face hardened with determination. "We're going to stop him. We're going to make sure he pays for what he's done to you, to those other women, to everyone he's hurt." Rachel nodded, wiping her tears. The betrayal was crushing, but she wouldn't be a victim. She would fight back. They called the police and presented everything they had found. The detective assigned to their case, Inspector Adeola, listened with a grim expression. "Mrs. Mitchell, Ms. Rachel, I'm sorry to say that this particular crime syndicate has been on our radar for over 2 years. They're very sophisticated, very careful. We've struggled to build a case strong enough to arrest them because they cover their tracks well, and their victims often don't come forward due to embarrassment. But with your cooperation, we might finally be able to take them down." Inspector Adeola explained the plan. Rachel would pretend everything was normal. She would not confront Brandon or let him know they were onto him. Instead, they would set a trap. The police would monitor all financial accounts, track Brandon's movements, and wait for him to make his final move. When he attempted the big theft, the one that would drain everything and trigger his disappearance, the police would be ready. Rachel would be wearing a wire during their conversations to gather evidence of his crimes. It was dangerous, but it was the only way to catch not just Brandon, but his entire network. The next few days were the hardest of Rachel's life. Brandon came home from his business trip with flowers and apologies for being away. He kissed her, held her, whispered sweet words of love. All of it a performance, all of it lies. Rachel had to respond, had to pretend she still trusted him, had to sleep beside a man she now knew was a dangerous criminal. Every smile she gave him felt like swallowing poison. Every "I love you," he said to her felt like a knife in her heart. But she persisted because she thought of those other women, the ones who had been destroyed by this man and his associates. Someone had to stop him. The police monitoring revealed shocking information. Brandon wasn't working alone. He had a whole team. A woman who posed as a friend and gathered information at social events, a tech expert who handled the financial crimes, a lawyer who created false documents, and several other husbands running the same scam on other wealthy women simultaneously. It was a full criminal enterprise, and Brandon was one of their most successful operators because he was so convincing, so charming, so good at making women fall in love with him. Rachel learned that even during their courtship, Brandon had been running scams on 2 other women in different cities. While he was wooing her with romantic dates and thoughtful gifts, he was simultaneously engaged to a banker's daughter in Accra and having an affair with a politician's daughter in Nairobi. He would rotate between cities, spending weeks with each woman, making each one feel special and loved. It was all choreographed, all planned, all fake. The beautiful ring he had proposed with, bought with money stolen from a previous victim. The thoughtful gifts that made Rachel feel so cherished. Generic items from a playbook he used on every woman. On the 7th day of Rachel's undercover cooperation, Brandon made his move. He came home from a supposed business meeting looking stressed. "Baby, I need to talk to you about something important. My consulting business has an incredible opportunity, a contract with a major corporation, but I need to invest significant capital up front to secure it. It's a sure thing, guaranteed to triple our investment within 6 months. But I need to move quickly. I need you to authorize a wire transfer of $300,000 to my business account. Can you do that tomorrow?" Rachel, wearing the wire the police had given her, played her part perfectly. $300,000? Brandon, that's a lot of money. Can I see the contract? Can we have our lawyer review it? Brandon's charm shifted slightly, showing frustration. "Rachel, this is business. You don't understand these things. Time is critical. If we don't move tomorrow, we lose the opportunity. Don't you trust me? I'm your husband. I've never steered us wrong." "Of course I trust you." Rachel lied, her heart pounding. "I just want to make sure we're making smart decisions. Can we sleep on it and discuss it more tomorrow?" Brandon's jaw tightened, but he forced a smile. "Sure, baby. Tomorrow. But we really can't wait longer than that." That night, Rachel couldn't sleep. Brandon lay beside her, his breathing even and calm, no indication of guilt or conscience. How could someone sleep so peacefully while planning to destroy someone's life? The next morning, Rachel told Brandon she would authorize the transfer. They went to the bank together. Brandon was relaxed, confident, already mentally spending the money he thought he was about to steal. What he didn't know was that the bank was filled with undercover police officers. When Rachel asked to make the large wire transfer, the bank manager, who was working with the police, asked them to step into a private office to complete the paperwork. As soon as the door closed, Inspector Adeola and 4 other officers entered. "Brandon Williams, you are under arrest for fraud, identity theft, money laundering, forgery, and conspiracy to commit grand larceny." Brandon's face went from confident to shocked to calculating in seconds. He looked at Rachel, and for the first time, she saw his real face. Cold, calculating, devoid of the warmth and charm he had shown her. "You set me up," he said flatly. Rachel stood tall, meeting his eyes. "You tried to destroy me. I just stopped you." As the police handcuffed him, Brandon sneered. "You're not special, Rachel. You were just an easy mark. Your desperate mother practically gift-wrapped you for me. The saddest part? You actually thought someone like me could love someone like you without being paid for it." His words were meant to wound, and they did. But Rachel didn't let him see her pain. "The sad part is that you're so broken inside that you can't recognize real value. You're going to prison, Brandon, and I'm going to make sure every woman you hurt gets justice." As they led him away, the police arrested 2 other members of his team who had been waiting outside the bank. Within 48 hours, the entire operation was dismantled. 8 criminals were arrested across 3 countries. Evidence seized from their operations helped identify 17 victims who had lost a combined total of over $4 million. The case made international news. Rachel's bravery in working with the police was praised. Several of the other victims came forward, and together they formed a support group and advocacy organization to help women who had been victimized by romance fraud. Diana's role in initially facilitating the situation was not made public, but the guilt weighed on her heavily. The relationship between mother and daughter was severely damaged, possibly beyond repair. Months after Brandon's arrest and conviction, Rachel and Diana sat down for a difficult conversation in a family therapist's office. Diana spoke first, her voice thick with remorse. "Rachel, I know I can never undo what I did. I know my desperation and weakness led you directly into danger. I violated your trust, your autonomy, and your dignity. I treated you like a problem to be solved rather than a person to be respected. I let society's judgment matter more than your actual well-being. I failed you as a mother in the worst possible way, and I will carry that guilt for the rest of my life. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know that I see clearly now what I couldn't see then, that you never needed fixing. You were always enough exactly as you were. Rachel was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was measured and tired. Mom, I loved him. That's the part that hurts the most. It wasn't just that he was a criminal or that you paid him. It's that I genuinely fell in love with someone who didn't exist. I imagined a future with him. I trusted him with my heart, my body, my dreams. And all of it was a lie built on another lie, your arrangement. I don't know who I'm more angry at, Brandon for being a monster, or you for opening the door and inviting him in. You didn't protect me. You sold me. I know, Diana whispered, tears flowing freely. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it right, even though I know I can't. The therapist gently guided them through processing the trauma, the betrayal, and the complex emotions of a mother-daughter relationship damaged by good intentions and terrible execution. It would take years of therapy and hard work before Rachel could even begin to trust her mother again. Some wounds heal, but they leave scars that never quite fade. Rachel eventually learned to trust again, but cautiously. She became a powerful advocate for women's rights and financial literacy, speaking publicly about her experience to help others avoid similar traps. She learned that her worth was never determined by her marital status, that being single was better than being in a dangerous relationship, and that societal pressure should never dictate life-altering decisions. Diana continued her business success, but redirected much of her wealth toward funding organizations that helped victims of fraud and fought against the cultural pressures that had driven her to make such a devastating choice. Brandon was sentenced to 15 years in prison. The other members of his syndicate received similar sentences. The money they had stolen was partially recovered and returned to victims, though many would never fully recover financially or emotionally from what had been done to them. In his victim impact statement hearing, Brandon showed no remorse, calling his crimes just business and his victims too stupid to deserve their money anyway. The judge, disgusted by his complete lack of humanity, gave him the maximum sentence possible. The story of Diana paying a man to marry her daughter, not knowing his real intention, became a cautionary tale told across West Africa and beyond. It illustrated the dangers of desperation, the importance of due diligence, the damage caused by societal pressure, and the vulnerability that criminals exploit. But it also showed the power of courage, the importance of fighting back against injustice, and the possibility of redemption even after terrible mistakes. So what's the lesson here? Desperation makes you vulnerable to predators who can sense your weakness from miles away. Societal pressure should never drive you to compromise your values or make dangerous decisions. No one should ever be pressured into marriage or relationships, no matter how old they are or what society says. Your worth is not determined by your relationship status, and being single is infinitely better than being with the wrong person. Do your research on people before trusting them with your heart, your money, or your life. And most importantly, if someone seems too perfect, too convenient, too eager to solve all your problems, they probably have ulterior motives. Trust your instincts, protect yourself, and never let anyone make you feel less valuable because of arbitrary social standards. What did you think of this story? Was Diana wrong to do what she did? Would you have forgiven her? Could you work with police while pretending everything was normal like Rachel did? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your perspective. If this story shocked you, moved you, or taught you something, smash that like button and share this with someone who needs to hear this message about staying alert and protecting yourself from manipulators. Subscribe and hit the notification bell for more powerful African folktales that teach real-world wisdom. Check out our playlist for more incredible stories. Remember, never let desperation drive your decisions. Trust must be earned, not bought. Your worth is inherent, not determined by others. Stay safe, stay smart, and never compromise your dignity for anyone's approval. I'll see you in the next story.